What is going on? It is Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we are going to be taking a deep dive into the 2023 Atlanta Falcons. So if you guys are new, would love for you guys to stick around. Again, this series doesn't get very much popularity as it is, but I like making this series for those Falcons fans out there who do want to be able to see this quick little breakdown, but also because it teaches me as well, which is going to make a lot better content in the fall. So again, feel free to stick around. Would love for that. Yes, the word behind all of the players right in front of you is going to be RIZZR because I need to find a 5-letter or 4-letter word to fit behind him that looks cool. And it's kind of funny to say that instead of Ritter. So let's get right into this. If you guys are new to the series, we go and break down the depth chart, and then we go into the records predictions. And starting out with the skill positions to offensive line, then defensive line to skill positions, we have Desmond Ritter. So I think that he might be one of the weaknesses of the team. Now, I know that there's going to be a lot of pushback for that, and I respect that. He honestly has had some very good flashes, and I'm all for it. I always have this mantra that I'd much rather be wrong about a player I don't like than right, because I enjoy good football far more than I do being able to be right about a player I was lower on. That's just me. That's the type of person I am. I know a lot of people have more, let's just say, higher priority egos, to put it politely, and they care a lot more about being right. I don't. I really could care less when it comes to this situation. I would love for Ritter to prove me wrong. I'm not fully sold yet. He was my QB7 as of a little bit over a year ago. I know that sounds asinine, that sounds crazy, but to be fair, I did have guys like Brock Purdy over him, and I think we could kind of argue whether Brock Purdy is better or not. Regardless, I do think Desmond Ritter has potential to be a starter. He has great athleticism, good arm strength. I got to see him in person multiple times because I go to SMU, pony up, until we get our asses whooped by them. But that's okay. Got to see our asses get whooped by Desmond Ritter plenty of times, and he definitely is someone who can win games. I just have an issue with his placement. It does seem to be spotty here and there, but I do think if that does continue to improve, which we've seen with multiple quarterbacks who are very good commanders in the locker room, that he could certainly be the longer-term answer. Regardless, and you get the running back, Bijan Robinson, number 8 overall pick in this past year. He's awesome. He's a freak. He's probably the best player on this team, and he has some very good ones for sure. Looking at that overall grade of a B, it's not a joke. I mean, again, this is a very solid squad. Now, looking at the wide receivers, Drake London was one of my favorites. I think he was my wide receiver 2 that year, just a little bit over a year ago. And I think I had Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 1. So it was a really good top of the class. I had full faith in Drake London, and I think that he's going to end up just being one of those really, really, really top tier players. He has the size, he has all the ability that you could want. So there's not really much that's wrong with Drake London, and I think that when something more consistent comes into the quarterbacking room, whether that is Desmond Ritter or whether that is a more consistent QB in the long run, I think that he's going to end up shining out as probably the best player, not named Bijan Robinson, on this offense. White wide receiver is Mac Hollins. That does scare the living hell out of me because I don't think Mac Hollins is all that great. I think he's a really good depth piece. I was a big fan of Mac Hollins. I'm pretty sure he was on the Eagles. I remember I saw him in a preseason game. I was like, wow, that guy looks really good. And, he's had some good stints with the Raiders as well. He's had success. And I think that's awesome. But I do not think, similar to Isaiah Hodgins, that he should be a starting boundary wide receiver. That's just me. And I hope that he proves me wrong again. But I am certainly concerned there. And Scotty Miller in the slot is honestly pretty fine. He hasn't really done that much in a hot minute. But I still think that his talent level, he's been able to prove that he can change the pace of a game. And if he's able to do that, awesome. I don't think that this team is all out of luck in that receiving core. It just certainly is one of those things I am concerned about. I was hoping that they'd do a little bit more. Pretty sure Frank Darby's still on the roster as well, but I wasn't a huge fan of Frank Darby. Looking at the offensive line, Jake Matthews, obviously got that 3-year extension. That's great for him. There were rumors that they were looking at left tackle Peter Skoronski, who's now a guard, but then they moved up in the second round and got Matt Bergeron. I was a little bit skeptical of that. I'm not a huge fan of Matt Bergeron, but as a guard, I think that's perfectly fine. I think that going after and developing your offensive line is never a bad thing. Drew Dalman, I think there are better centers out there, but I also don't think that he's a tomato can. So we'll see what happens this year. Chris Lindstrom is one of the best in the game, so gotta love that one. And then Caleb McGarry, I'm pretty sure you just also brought him back on in the offseason. Good for him. Tight end, once again, that I forgot, Kyle Pitts. People are saying he's the biggest bust of all time for a tight end. I don't think that's true at all. Like, he hasn't had any success, but that doesn't make him a bust. We've seen the talent, and he had, I believe, over 1,000 yards his rookie year. Like, just something isn't working with the offense, and I'm sure something will. He's already shown that he can play. So how the hell can you call him a bust when he's just not working in the system? I think that's really stupid. Honestly, personally, I'd rather move him out to right wide receiver and have Matt Collins be in that rotation and say, Kyle, you want to take a chance at being receiver? You ran, if I'm not mistaken, in the 4.4s or the 4.3s. Like, you have the size, you have everything you could ever want. So I think Kyle Pitts, his story ain't written yet. It's not over. So definitely keep some hope there. And I think it's Keidron Smith there at fullback, but I'm not really going to put too much emphasis there on the fullback. But notable backups, Matt Hennessy and Jalen Mayfield. You have some good depth there at the interior of the offensive line. I do like that a lot because it does push guys like Matt Bergeron to be able to, play at his highest ability. If you guys are wondering, like, maybe Hennessy is probably going to be the starter. This is based off of our lads depth chart. So I'm just parroting what they're doing for the time being. Things will change, but for the time being, this is what we have. Until the season rolls out, this is what we have. And I think this is a lot better of an idea. If we get one position wrong, that's literally under 10%, I'm going to accept those odds. But then you got, Jalen Mayfield, Matt Hennessy. I love the fact that they have that depth there. Jonnu Smith, that tight end, again, I think Kyle Pitts should move out to wide receiver, start Jonnu Smith, say, like, you know what? We're going to see what happens here. And then you have really, really good depth at running back. Cordell Patterson lit the NFL on fire based on his resurgence as a running back. And then Tyler Algier had a really good year last year as well. For all you Falcons fans who tore me apart for taking Jahmyr Gibbs in the second round, I don't know what to say. Y'all spent the first round pick on one, so definitely, interesting right there. But then you got, of course, Bijan, who's probably going to be the rookie of the year. He's going to carry the team. I think Kyle Pitts, I think with Desmond Ridder going to year 2, we'll probably have a better connection with him. I'm praying to God. And then Tyler Algier, especially if Bijan Robinson, they're going to put him on a snap count. I hope they do, because I don't want this poor guy to get run into the ground when this team is not necessarily ready to compete. I hope that he has a significant amount of touches as well. Going on to the next spot here, we have the defense. So, there's some really good players on this team. I was debating on whether I was going to move it to an A-, look based on Caden Ellis, but we'll get to him in a second. You got Grady Jarrett here, David Onyemata, Calais Campbell, 2 of those guys. The latter 2 were free agent acquisitions, as well as Bud Dupree. So you have 3 new guys starting on your roster. Again, things are, up for debate as to who's going to start where. You have Arnold Ebiketie there with Lorenzo Carter. You could see Arnold step up, high second-round pick from a little bit over a year ago. So you have some really good pieces on that defensive line. Calais Campbell is an amazing veteran who can still play, even at his age, at a super high level. David Onyemata, he was one of those key pieces in division in New Orleans on that front. And then, of course, Grady Jarrett's Grady Jarrett. But Bud Dupree was an interesting acquisition. He was not very, very expensive, so I don't really blame you boosting their edge rush group when a little bit over a year ago we said that was their worst aspect on the team. Is not a bad idea at all. I do like that a lot. But I do think Arnold Ebiketie is going to potentially take a step up. You have Zach Harrison, who was just drafted there as a backup as well. Interesting that they listed him as a backup to Bud Dupree, but he does have similar measurables at about 270. We'll definitely see what happens there, because I think he has a lot of room to grow, but you never know. Linebackers, Caden Ellis, I was going to actually rip him a new one, but looking at how he played last year for New Orleans, he took a big step up. So I'm excited to see if he can continue that trend. Troy Anderson, I really liked him last year. He obviously ran extremely fast. He has a lot of potential there for sure. He's a veteran guy, Senior Bowl player. I don't know if he's going to really be the face of the defense, but I do think that he could have that potential. Richie Grant he was one of the guys who could have potentially been in the worst units. He had really good statistics last year in terms of touchdowns, pass breakups, and interceptions, but the consistency really isn't there. You'll see the peaks and valleys for sure. Jesse Bates is a freaking beast. I'm not going to even need to talk about that one. Great addition. But Mike Hughes he took a big dip last year when he went to Detroit. I hope he takes a step up this year. You got AJ Terrell and Jeff Okudah. I mean, I think that's awesome. I think Jeff Okudah, even though he did take a big step up last year, I think he might take an even larger step this year with the mentorship of a star corner like AJ Terrell. Again, you got to watch out there for the nickelback, though. If Mike Hughes doesn't perform, you got Clark Phillips, who I think is amazing. And forgot to mention Eddie Goldman as well. I'm also a Bears fan, so being able to see someone like Eddie Goldman still sticking around is awesome because he is a very solid player. But overall, this defense is really solid. Hard pressed not to give it an A-, but I really want to see a little more star power there on those edge rushing positions. They have good depth, but not really fully sold yet there. So we'll see what happens. There's 2 layers to the defense that I'm a little bit more concerned about. But let's get right into the schedule. We'll break this down game by game. 9-8. I did not think I was going to give them 9-8. I thought I was going to give them worse than that. But to be honest, this team is really good. That's why I do this series. It's because when you break down each position, you're like, oh, wow, I forgot about that player. Or for Caden Ellis, I'm like, well, let's do some more research. Let's look into the statistics. And it's like, oh, wow, that is, he is actually pretty damn solid for New Orleans last year. So, he's probably going to be taking a much higher snap count. But someone who can project because he has been going up each year. But continuing on, versus Carolina, I think that this team's going to just be a little bit more in gear. You have Bijan that you can kind of rely on a little bit. Carolina's a good team, though. We'll get to them tomorrow. They're a very good team. I'm not going to crap on them at all. Green Bay, again, they're having a new quarterback. So you have new quarterbacks at weeks 1 and 2. It's very difficult to be able to handle an offense out the gate when you do have one that's more running back centric here with the Falcons. I think this team also is just really good. You have Detroit and Jacksonville, 2 tough away games, man. 2 very tough away games. Detroit, they are a good squad. I am just much more lower on them this year than I was last year. I thought they were a really good team, could make a playoff push. They ended up not hitting the draft the way I wanted them to this year. I feel like they pushed all of their needed positions up a little bit, the needed positions down and their wants up. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be awesome. We'll talk about them probably a week or 2 when I do that division. But when it comes down to it, Detroit didn't end up locking up a number 1 receiver. So they don't even have Jameson Williams at this point based on the suspension. And then they don't have a really solid number 1 boundary corner with Jeff Okudah there. I am a bit worried, to put it lightly. I'm a bit worried for the team. But I do think overall they are still a very good squad. I think that Jared Goff is a pretty damn solid game manager. And I think that they do have enough talent for sure to potentially challenge this team, but that is a toss-up. I would not be surprised if the team started 3-0, but Jacksonville is a super loaded roster. I think they're a very talented team, and they make do with less. So that's what I like the most about them. Houston, again, a team that's still going to be getting the rhythm with CJ Stroud. They still have some big holes here and there, so I do think this team could certainly match up very well to them. Washington is, I wanted them to be better, but they just simply lack the oomph and the depth. Then you got Tampa Bay, which is honestly a much better roster than I expected. But, this is a team I could totally see losing that game. You're going to Tampa Bay. I could switch the Detroit and Tampa Bay thing. Tampa Bay records or games, that is. And you guys could end up still 9-8. That could be something that I would be open to doing. But I did just drop my Tampa Bay video. Regardless, it wouldn't change anything in terms of the conference/draft pick for either team. So you can do it in your own minds. Regardless, I think that this team is a very talented team. And I think that Tampa Bay is a very good roster with a big critical flaw. But also Tampa Bay. It's a pain in the ass to play there. Then you go to Tennessee. They're, I think, a slightly better team than Tampa. And based on the fact they actually have a quarterback. And then you're also playing in that heat. It's going to be very tough to weather that 2 weeks in a row. Then you got Minnesota. Minnesota's a good roster, man. That's going to be a fun game to watch. It really depends on how well Desmond Ridder plays. You go to Arizona, take that W, and then you go into New Orleans on a bye. Or actually, you have New Orleans come to you on a bye. I think that's going to be a nice W for you guys as well. I have you guys splitting with New Orleans, though, because of the fact that New Orleans is also a pretty damn good team. It's up in the air whether New Orleans really does deserve the number 1 place in the division. I could totally see them losing to the Patriots, for example. That's the one game where I'm going back and forth on it, but I'm going to stick to my original records predictions on that. Again, Tampa Bay ended up taking a sweep on them, but then you go to Carolina. I really like Bryce Young. I think he'll be in rhythm by that point. And it's Carolina. Indy, it's going to be a tough game because I do believe in Anthony Richardson as well, but I think you guys take the W. You guys are a very good roster. And then you go to Chicago, which is going to be cold as hell, and then to New Orleans, which again, very good team at home, trying to make a push for the number 1 spot in the division. If you guys beat them in that one, then you guys take the crown. But regardless, you guys are making the playoffs. So, it's quite a surprise. You're number 7 in the conference. I believe that you guys are making the playoffs at that point. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you on the far side. Peace.